He was guilty the moment they saw his skin, long before they saw the evidence. They didn't need a trial. They didn't need witnesses. All they needed was a blurry traffic photo, a quick headline, and a young black man behind the wheel. Elijah Morrow, 20 years old. No record. No warning signs. Just a scholarship student on his way to class. But to the system? He was already another statistic waiting to be processed. Another body behind bars. Another case that could be closed quickly and cleanly. The accusation: hit and run in a crosswalk. The evidence: a time-stamped image from a speed camera. A dashcam clip with missing frames. And one eyewitness whose description felt more like a stereotype than a statement. The victim was injured but survived. The city wanted answers. The media wanted closure. And the system? It wanted a conviction. Elijah was arrested, fingerprinted, and thrown into a courtroom where nobody expected a defense, let alone a fight. But Elijah had been watching systems fail for years. And this time, he wasn't going down quietly. He chose to represent himself. They laughed. They whispered. They warned. But Elijah didn't come to be liked. He came to dismantle the lie. He asked questions no one expected. Where's the calibration record for the speed sensor? Why was the footage trimmed? Who verified the witness statement against the GPS data? No one had answers. No one had even checked. And then he showed them what they missed. A traffic sensor that hadn't been updated in 11 months. A visual blind spot at the corner camera. And most devastating of all, a second vehicle caught by a forgotten store camera, captured from an angle no one thought to review. Elijah didn't just prove his innocence. He exposed how easily the system bends when no one's watching. This wasn't just his story. It was a message for every courtroom that confuses speed with truth and silence with guilt. Because when the gavel fell, the system didn't just lose a case. It lost its mask. He wasn't seen as a defendant. He was treated as a conclusion. When Elijah walked into that courtroom for the first time, it wasn't his name on trial, it was his image. He was 20. Clean record. Business casual. Head held high. But to the bailiff, he was a suspect. To the jury, he was a shadow. And to prosecutor Miles Brennan, he was a win waiting to be claimed. The opening statement didn't bother with nuance. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is clear. The defendant's vehicle was photographed speeding through the crosswalk minutes before a pedestrian was struck. We have location. We have motive. We have confirmation. Confirmation? Elijah, seated alone at the defense table, leaned back slightly. He wasn't nervous. He was preparing. The prosecution's confirmation came in the form of a low-resolution traffic image, timestamped at 3:07 p.m., showing a dark blue sedan at the edge of an intersection. Elijah's car. No question. But the photo didn't show a victim. Didn't show contact. Didn't show a driver. Still, the gallery nodded along. The judge took notes. The prosecutor smiled. Then came the eyewitness. A middle-aged man named Charles Devon. Well-dressed, authoritative, confident. He claimed he saw the whole thing while waiting at a nearby bus stop. Said he saw a black male hit the victim, slow down for a second, and then deliberately drive off. Elijah didn't flinch. He stood when given the chance to cross-examine. No objection to his presence, Your Honor, he said. But I do have a question. He looked straight at the witness. You said you were at the bus stop. Which side of the street? Southbound, Devon replied. Then how could you see through the car's left window when the impact happened on the passenger side? The witness blinked. Elijah followed up. Was there anything between you and the crosswalk? A hedge. A hedge? Yes. Waist high. Do you know the height of a Toyota Camry window? Silence. Do you wear corrective lenses, Mr. Devon? I do. A ripple went through the gallery. The judge looked up. Elijah turned back to the jury. He never saw me. He saw what he expected to see. Suddenly, the courtroom wasn't so sure. The assumption of guilt had just taken its first blow. But Elijah wasn't done. He presented his own timeline, complete with digital receipts showing his phone's location at a gas station 1 minute before the alleged incident. He requested security footage from the store. It was pending retrieval, but the metadata already placed his device far from the scene. So why am I here, he asked. Because someone looked at a photo and filled in the rest. This wasn't just about a car in a picture. It was about a story that everyone rushed to finish before they understood the beginning. And as Elijah sat down, even the judge paused before proceeding. Because for the first time, the room had to consider an uncomfortable truth. Maybe the system wasn't searching for justice. Maybe it was just searching for someone who fit. They didn't need to lie. They just needed the truth to stay cropped. In a world built on narratives, a single image can make or break you. And in Elijah's case, it almost did. The prosecution's key evidence was a grainy still from a municipal traffic camera. Time-stamped. Archived. Automated. It showed Elijah's blue Toyota Camry caught in motion, slicing through a crosswalk, blurred brake lights, a pedestrian-shaped silhouette, and time-stamped metadata that screamed, 3:07 and 22 seconds p.m. It was all they needed. Or so they thought. Elijah stood, silent for a moment, holding the printed frame. He slowly walked to the projection screen, clicked a remote, and zoomed in. "This is your proof," he said. "But it's not the picture I'm interested in. It's what's missing." He toggled to the metadata view, a raw file readout pulled from the city's public access API. Line by line, he dissected it. Exposure time, irregular. Frame interval, inconsistent. GPS sync, off by 4.2 seconds. Compression level. Enhanced post-capture. Then came the moment no one expected. Elijah produced the raw video, not just the still, but the 30-second clip before and after the evidence. And that's when everything changed. The court watched as another vehicle, nearly identical in shape and color, passed through the same crosswalk 5 seconds earlier. Same angle. Same brake light flicker. But that car? Its license plate was never documented. It came and went uncounted, unnoticed, forgotten by a system that grabbed one frame and decided that was enough. Elijah turned to the jury. "You were shown a moment. But the moment isn't the whole story." He walked slowly back to his seat. "This court was asked to convict me based on a cropped image, when the full picture tells a completely different story." The prosecutor objected. Claimed the other car was irrelevant. Argued it was coincidence or visual confusion. But the judge didn't cut Elijah off. Not this time. Instead, Judge Tallow leaned forward and asked, "Mr. Morrow, are you suggesting the prosecution knowingly withheld this footage?" Elijah shook his head. "No, Your Honor. I'm suggesting they never looked for it. Negligence. Not malice. But to someone accused, does the difference matter? Because in this system, incomplete evidence is just as deadly as false evidence." The courtroom murmured. Reporters scribbled notes. Even the bailiff leaned in. This wasn't just a defense anymore. It was an exposé. Because when you build a case on a still frame, you better hope no one ever presses play. Justice isn't blind, it just forgets to check its blind spots. By the third day of the trial, the energy in the courtroom had shifted. What had begun as a seemingly open and shut case was starting to crumble, not through theatrics, but through precision. Elijah Morrow wasn't raising doubts. He was building something far more dangerous to the prosecution, a pattern. He began the day by turning everyone's attention not to the video, but to what the video couldn't see. "Your Honor," Elijah said calmly, "before I continue, I'd like to call a witness of my own." Whispers buzzed through the gallery. He didn't have a legal team. He didn't have resources. So who could he possibly call? From the back of the courtroom, Naomi Jakes stepped forward. A 27-year-old store manager from a convenience shop located across the street from the scene. She carried nothing but a USB stick and wore the same beige apron she had on when the incident occurred. Elijah didn't waste time. Did anyone from law enforcement request video footage from your store in relation to the incident? No, she replied. Was your store within direct view of the intersection? Yes. Do your security cameras record externally? Yes. He plugged in the USB. New footage appeared. The courtroom fell still. The camera, mounted higher and at a wider angle than the traffic cam, revealed something the prosecution's evidence never showed: a large delivery truck blocking the view of the crosswalk at the exact moment the alleged impact took place. The implication? Neither the traffic cam nor the dashcam had a clear line of sight. Even more damning, the footage showed a second bystander, a young woman with a phone in her hand, frozen in shock, who was never interviewed, never named, never even mentioned in the police report. We had a clear shot of the crosswalk, Naomi explained. We offered it to the officers, but they said it wasn't needed. Elijah didn't speak for a moment. Then he turned to the judge. Your Honor, I submit that the investigation was not just incomplete, it was constructed to avoid contradiction. He walked to the jury. If the system really wanted to know what happened, it would have asked more questions. It would have looked harder. But they didn't. Because when they had a photo that made me look guilty, they stopped searching. A deep silence blanketed the room. In most trials, bystanders are footnotes. Background. Peripheral. But in Elijah's case, they were the key. Because what they saw and what they were never asked told a different story. A story of oversight, assumptions, and deliberate convenience. As he sat down, Elijah added one final remark. You call it blind justice. I call it selective vision. They didn't just misidentify him, they designed a trap and waited for someone like him to walk into it. Some intersections are built for movement. Others are built for mistakes. By the time Elijah reached the fourth day of his trial, he had already dismantled the core of the state's argument. But now, he was ready to attack the foundation, the very environment in which the alleged crime occurred. Let's talk about the crosswalk, Elijah said. Not the one in your imagination, the real one. He brought up a digital map projection and overlay of traffic sensors, light timing, camera placements, and public works notes gathered through a Freedom of Information request he had filed during pretrial. The jury leaned in. What the screen revealed was shocking. The crosswalk in question had malfunctioned pedestrian signals for over 6 months. The timing of the lights was irregular, giving drivers a green signal 4.2 seconds before the pedestrian walk sign activated. And most critically, the traffic camera that snapped the image used by the prosecution was mounted at an angle intentionally positioned to surveil lane flow, not pedestrian interaction. It wasn't a crime scene. It was a trap. How many people walked through this crosswalk last month? Elijah asked. How many were hit? How many were falsely accused? No one had an answer. Elijah continued. He brought up municipal maintenance records showing that 5 other complaints had been logged about that intersection in the 3 months before the accident, none of which had been addressed. Then he showed something else. An internal memo from the city's traffic engineering department noting that the intersection had been flagged for sensor error risk due to outdated software and lack of maintenance funds. So let me get this straight, Elijah said. The city installs a broken system. The police build a case from its data. The prosecution files charges without verifying it. And I'm the one facing prison? The words landed like thunder. Even Judge Tallow leaned forward, visibly unsettled. You're telling us this entire case hinges on infrastructure failure, the prosecutor snapped. Elijah looked at him squarely. No, counselor. I'm telling you this case hinges on your failure to question what was broken long before I ever passed through it. The courtroom murmured. The weight of systemic failure began to overshadow the details of one young man's alleged actions. The jury no longer saw Elijah as a suspect. They saw him as a stand-in for everyone who had ever been blamed without context. This wasn't justice, Elijah concluded. It was bureaucracy, laziness, and prejudice wearing a black robe. And as he sat down, you could feel it. The prosecution wasn't just losing the case. They were losing the narrative. They didn't destroy the truth. They just hoped no one would know where to find it. Some lies are loud. Others hide quietly in storage drives, mislabeled folders, and evidence logs no one ever bothers to open. It was the 5th day of Elijah's trial. By now, the gallery was packed. Reporters sat elbow to elbow. The jury was alert. And the judge? He'd stopped scribbling and started watching. Elijah rose slowly. "Your Honor," he said, "I'd like to submit newly recovered evidence, material that was collected but never disclosed." The courtroom stilled. "I have reason to believe critical footage from a secondary municipal camera, one not included in the original discovery, contains information that contradicts the prosecution's core timeline." Miles Brennan, the prosecutor, objected immediately. "This is highly irregular. The defense cannot surprise us with unvetted material." "Then maybe," Elijah said coolly, "you should have vetted it yourself." The judge allowed it. Elijah inserted the USB and played the footage. A second city camera. Mounted behind a street lamp. Unlisted in the traffic unit's shared database. Its angle, obscured partially by tree branches, captured the crosswalk from the opposite direction, a view that no one in law enforcement had requested or revealed. The timestamp? 3:06 and 55 seconds p.m. The footage? Devastating. The video showed a car nearly identical to Elijah's, same model, same color, but with a distinct bumper sticker and a broken tail light. That car ran the red light. That car hit the pedestrian. That car fled. Elijah's car appeared 6 seconds later, slowing near the intersection, hazard lights flashing, as he pulled over to call 911. The dashboard camera didn't show a crime. It showed a witness. The entire court sat in frozen disbelief. "Why wasn't this reviewed?" the judge asked. "Because," Elijah answered, "it didn't fit the version they already believed." He held up the official evidence log. This footage was indexed, stored, and labeled. But no one watched it. What began as a defense had become a full-blown indictment, not of Elijah, but of a system that stopped looking as soon as it thought it found someone who looked guilty. The judge demanded an explanation from the prosecution. Brennan stammered. Blamed understaffing, oversight, poor file management. But the damage was done. Elijah turned to the jury. "This video isn't just about me. It's about how easy it is to become a suspect when no one wants the truth to get in the way of a good arrest." The silence in the room was deafening. This footage was buried. And so was justice. He returned to his seat, shoulders straight, head high, not as a defendant, but as the most credible person in the room. He walked in as a suspect. He walked out as a symbol. The final day didn't begin with arguments. It began with silence. The kind of silence that only comes when a room full of people realizes they've been looking at the wrong story the whole time. Elijah Morrow sat alone at the defense table. No attorney. No legal team. Just a binder filled with evidence, and 5 days' worth of truth. Judge Tallow entered slowly. His expression was different now, not distant, not distracted, but weighed down. He took his seat, looked over his glasses, and asked the jury foreperson to rise. The room held its breath. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" "We have, Your Honor." "How do you find the defendant, Elijah Morrow, on the charge of felony hit and run?" "Not guilty." Gasps. Some cried. One reporter dropped his pen. But Elijah? He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just closed his binder, quietly, like a man who always knew the truth would speak, if given enough room to breathe. Judge Tallow addressed the court. This trial has not only raised serious concerns about the specific case at hand, but about broader procedures within our justice system. This court intends to launch a formal review of the investigative conduct related to this incident. For a moment, even the gavel seemed reluctant to fall. Outside, the courthouse was a sea of microphones and cameras. But Elijah didn't walk out as a headline. He walked out as a message. When a reporter shouted, "What's next for you, Elijah?" he paused, looked up, and said, "Law school." Because after everything he'd seen, every shortcut, every assumption, every buried frame, he knew that defending himself had been just the beginning. His case would go on to be cited in debates on evidence disclosure, implicit bias, and prosecutorial accountability. Professors would build seminars around the crosswalk defense. And for students like Elijah, kids often seen, rarely heard, it became a signal. You don't have to be a lawyer to fight back. You just have to be ready when the system calls your name. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a wrongly accused young man. It was about a courtroom transformed. A mirror held to the faces of those who thought justice could be rushed. And the long overdue reminder that truth does not arrive by default, it must be demanded. As the doors of the courtroom closed behind him, Elijah Morrow didn't just win a trial. He opened one against every system that confuses compliance with guilt and silence with surrender.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that move the world. Thanks for watching.